There's a lot of buyers agents out there. There's a lot of companies that sit there and they go, we're data driven and, we're looking for that next hotspot and we're looking for those different areas. The difference between myself and those guys is they're looking at the entire nation and they're looking for those areas to move your money in those capital, okay? Now, some of those property areas that they're looking at are, those hotspots and other bits and pieces. So with what's come through, and I'm going to be personally having a chat to my accountant and trying to get a better understanding so I can then better recommend and make suggestions to my clients of what we do from a property investing strategy and everything like that. The capital gains tax change. So I'm not fully across how they're going to calculate that, but I know what's gone, and what's gone is that 50% discount. So if you have a business and they go, okay, the strategy is we're going to go and buy in X town. It's forecast to grow by 20% this year, and we're going to probably see another 20 or 25% increase the following year. So we're going to be looking at a 40% uplift. So we could get a $500,000 house, or we could get let's say $1 million house to keep it nice and simple. And we're going to get a $40,000 increase over that 2 years. So you're going to make 400 grand. Because you've held it for 2 years, you're going to be able to get a 50% discount. So you'll pay tax on 200. And because you're buying it as you and your wife, or you're buying it as a trust, you're going to be able to minimize or tweak the tax, but you'll get that $200,000 tax free. And then we can use it to go get your better quality asset over here. Well, that benefits them because they're getting another payday out of you, and they're coming up with this amazing strategy, and they're going to, in a sense, speculate on these hotspots. And, we've got all this data evidence to back up that this is the next boom town. Well, I can show you evidence of where those boom towns have gone bust and what that bust looks like and how that bust affects people from a generational perspective. Now, I could go and get licensed in New South Wales. I could go and get licensed in Victoria. I could go and get licensed in South Australia and Western Australia. But instead, I could also then go and look at places like Townsville and Cairns and everything like that. But as you've seen in previous videos, I would much rather go and inspect the properties myself, in a sense, do a bit of a scratch and a sniff test. I'm not a building and pest inspector in any shape, form, way, so I'm not saying that I'm doing a building and pest inspection, but I'm doing that scratch and sniff test to see if there's any issues in regards to the property. And I'm looking for, in a sense, those suburbs in and around the local area that are potentially going to have that next level of growth and uplift. In a later video, we can talk about one spot that I'm looking at quite heavily on Bribey Island, and the median price is really, really low compared to some of the others. I would much rather do a deep dive in my backyard and identify those hidden gems, those diamond in the roughs, save my clients time of having to sniff around, than claim to be an expert of the entire nation. So when I was talking before in regards to the hotspots, there's people out there that sit there and they talk about how Gladstone and West Gladstone, and Gladstone is an absolute phenomenal hotspot. And then I look at data like this, because I look at data, and this is where I'm getting my data from. I use Price Finder over CoreLogic. CoreLogic gives me 5 to 10 years of previous sale history. I can go back to 1993 with Price Finder. So I've got from current data right here, right now, all the way back to 93. And I think this here shows that exact example, right? So we had that sort of boom kick off. The mining boom sort of started around here. You had that mining infrastructure. You had a little bit of a rollover with the GFC, and then that mining and building the Gladstone coal seam gas export terminals. They ended up building 4 out there. That's where all that investment came in. And you can see right there. So if you bought a house on the back of, 2011. So you listen to one of those national buyers agents going, we've got the data, we can show that, you know, Gladstone is tracking, it's had a little bit of pullback, but, you know, have a look here, you know, it had a pullback of 8%, which is fantastic. That's given it time to recharge in the market. It grew back at 9.4%. The median price was higher than that. It's grown 19.7%. The data is in. It's going to grow by 10% this following year. It's just going to keep going to the moon. Well, there's your moon. And look at that. All the way down to 2017 of 185,000. And then 182,000. And then in 2022, it's at 322. So you bought in 2011, you've owned this bloody property in this regional town for 11 years, and you're still in a negative equity position. You're now back up here in 2025 for 510. And I will say that there's data companies out there that's gone in 2023, it had a pullback of 0.8, and then in 2024, it's come back at 30.3%. Last year, it grew at 18.6%. And this year so far, it's grown at 4.4%. You know, this is amazing. It's a moonshot. We've got it anticipated that it's going to 20%. When I look at this, to me, this here looks bloody similar to this. And I don't gamble. So I would much rather go and take somebody and take them to, say, Caboolture. And I'm just going to bring it up, which is on the northern fringe of Brisbane. Just waiting for the website to load. Here we go. Right. Now, if we have a look at here, we can see in 98 to 2000, it was down a little bit. But the major one was basically 2%. You know, if we have a look back in 2011, it fell by 7.8, and then it went there, and you could sit there and you could argue, Tim, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, you're crazy. But if we come and have a look here, 2010, the peak was at 320. If we roll down here, in 2016, it was at 335. If we go back to 2015, it was at 325. So within 5 years, it made up that little bit of a loss. Even if you had to take the hit on the chin at the worst possible time, which was 3 years later, you're losing 30 grand. If you had to take the hit on the chin at the worst possible time with West Gladstone, you're losing like $270,000. And then if you have a look, the growth has been pretty steady. So if you could just hold on and you bought at the worst possible time at 320,000 in 2010, right? And you could hold on for 11 years, so 2021, you're at 465,000. If you could have held on for the full 16 years, you're at 914,000. That's this year, okay? This year, Caboolture has seen a massive pop in value of prices, and that's from the beginning of the year. So as amazing as these data-driven companies are, and as great as they are at, you know, finding the next hotspot, you don't make money in real estate by buying and flipping overnight in these regional towns. You make money on buying strategic properties in great locations, looking at harvesting extra equity out of those properties and moving forward from there.